We all know a kid, or maybe we were that kid who just couldn't seem to sit still, always on the go.
hmm Constantly moving, talking, maybe finding it hard to focus sometimes.
And the immediate thought is often hyperactive. But for this deep dive, we really want to go beyond that. What's actually driving that constant motion?
Exactly. We're not just sticking with labels. We've pulled together quite a range of information, you know, parenting advice, medical perspective, scientific research, to really try and unpack what could be behind hyperactive behavior in children.
So the mission is to move past those surface explanations, look at potential root causes, and hopefully give you some genuine insights, some useful info, without getting bogged down in excessive detail.
Sounds good. So where should we start? Defining it, maybe.
Yeah, let's do that. What does hyperactivity actually look like beyond just, well, a kid with lots of energy?
Okay, so in general terms, yeah, it's that increased physical movement, acting impulsively, maybe a shorter attention span, getting distracted easily.
Right.
But some of the scientific sources, like Science Direct, get more specific. They talk about difficulty controlling spontaneous activity.
Okay.
High motor activity, sure, but also things like low frustration tolerance, hyperexcitability.
Hyperexcitability. What's that
It's
exactly?
like an unusually strong reaction, emotionally or physically, to things happening around them, and also trouble controlling impulses.
It really strikes me, though, that one person's hyperactive is another person's just being a kid, you know?
That is such a crucial point. It's definitely subjective. What seems excessive really depends on who's watching, their expectations, the setting.
Yeah.
The key thing really is when that hyperactivity starts causing problems, like it gets in the way of schoolwork or making and keeping friends, or it impacts the child's general well-being. That's when it becomes a genuine concern.
So it's about the impact it has.
Precisely. And it's also worth remembering this really high level of physical activity. It often does decrease as kids get older.
Okay, so when should parents or teachers start thinking, maybe this is more than just typical kid energy?
Well, one of the most common reasons for that kind of persistent impairing hyperactivity is, of course, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Right.
Our research points to it as a neurodevelopmental condition, so related to how the brain develops and functions. And it shows up as hyperactivity, sure, but also often inattention and impulsivity.
And there are different types. Right. But focusing on the hyperactivity part.
Exactly. Since that's our focus today, the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual professionals use,
Yep.
lists specific hyperactive and impulsive symptoms. Things like difficulty staying in their seat, squirming around a lot.
Always fidgeting.
Yeah, or getting up when they're supposed to be seated, running, or climbing when it's really not appropriate.
Okay.
Difficulty playing quietly, seeming like they're constantly driven by a motor, talking way too much.
Oh, I know that one.
Blurting out answers, finding it hard to wait their turn, interrupting conversations or games. It's quite a list.
It really is.
Yeah.
But lots of kids do some of that sometimes, don't they?
Absolutely. And that's the key. For an ADHD diagnosis, these behaviors need to be persistent, happen in different settings like home and school, and be clinically significant, meaning they genuinely impair the child's ability to function.
Got it. So it's about frequency and severity.
Exactly. And one source we looked at mentioned that in the U.S., around 11.4% of kids aged 3 to 17 have had an ADHD diagnosis at some point.
That's quite a few. And there was that interesting point about how it presents differently sometimes.
Yes, that's fascinating. The same source noted that hyperactivity tends to be observed more often in children assigned male at birth,
Okay.
whereas inattentiveness, that difficulty focusing, is more commonly picked up in those assigned female at birth, which might mean some cases, especially the inattentive type, get missed initially.
That makes sense. So how is ADHD actually diagnosed then? It's not just a checklist, right?
No, definitely not. There's no single test, like a blood test or brain scan. It's a comprehensive process. It usually involves a physical exam to rule out other medical things,
Right.
and then symptom checklists, getting information from parents, caregivers, teachers, plus a detailed history of the child's development and behavior patterns.
Okay, so ADHD is clearly a major potential cause. But that other source, 7 Hidden Causes, suggested it's not always ADHD, even if a child seems hyperactive.
That's right. It really broadens the perspective. There are other factors that can contribute, sometimes alongside ADHD, sometimes entirely separately.
Like parenting style, that one caught my eye.
Yes, this is a really interesting angle. The source suggests that different parenting approaches can, perhaps unintentionally, influence a child's activity level and their ability to self-regulate.
How so?
Well, take permissive parenting. Very few rules, not much structure or routine.
Kind of laissez-faire.
Sort of. And the idea is that without those clear boundaries and predictable routines, kids might struggle to develop their own internal controls. They might test limits more, which can look like hyperactivity.
Okay, that makes a certain kind of sense. What about the other extreme? Really strict parenting.
Authoritarian parenting, yeah. Overly strict, maybe critical, that can also contribute, but differently.
Wow.
Feeling constantly controlled or criticized can be stressful for a child. So that high energy might be a way of releasing stress or pushing back, trying to assert some independence. It can also feed into anxiety, which often shows up as restlessness.
So neither extreme seems ideal for helping kids regulate.
Generally, no. The research tends to favor what's called authoritative parenting. It's that balance, setting clear, reasonable boundaries and expectations, but doing it with warmth, emotional support, and allowing kids age-appropriate autonomy.
Structure and support.
Exactly. It gives kids the security they need, helps them learn to manage their behavior and emotions. The source suggested things like creating emotional safety, having predictable routines, setting fair limits, using positive reinforcement.
Practical stuff. Okay,
Ah.
moving on from parenting, nutrient deficiency. That seems like a less obvious connection.
It does, doesn't it? But the brain-body connection is powerful. This source highlighted how nutrition directly impacts brain function, particularly neurotransmitters like dopamine.
Dopamine. That's involved in focus and motivation.
Precisely. Focus, motivation, reward, emotional regulation. It's crucial. And if dopamine function isn't optimal, maybe due to lacking certain nutrients,
And what happens?
it can manifest as difficulty setting still, trouble focusing, impulsivity, emotional ups and downs, even seeking out intense activities just to get that dopamine hit. So diet could actually be a significant piece of the puzzle.
Wow. Okay, so what specific nutrients are we talking about? What should parents be thinking about?
Well, the brain needs building blocks. Protein is key, specifically amino acids like tyrosine found in eggs, fish, lean meats, legumes, Greek yogurt. That's a precursor to dopamine.
Got it. Protein.
Omega-3 fatty acids are also vital for brain cell communication. Think fatty fish, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts.
Okay.
And then vitamins B6, B9, folate, B12, found in leafy greens, whole grains, eggs. Plus important minerals, iron, magnesium, and zinc. Sources mention things like pumpkin seeds, dark leafy greens, red meat, oysters for those.
And the source specifically linked deficiencies in iron, magnesium, and zinc to hyperactivity.
Yes, it mentioned those are relatively common deficiencies and have been associated with increased hyperactivity in some studies.
So practically, what can someone do? Just start giving supplements.
Probably best not to jump straight to supplements without advice.
Yeah.
The source suggested maybe keeping a food diary first, see if there are patterns between diet and behavior. Focusing on whole, unprocessed foods, naturally rich in these nutrients, is a great start. And then maybe talking to a doctor or a registered dietitian about potential testing for deficiencies if concerns persist. Gradual changes are usually best.
Makes sense. All right, another big environmental factor mentioned was stress and anxiety.
Yes, and I think we can all relate to feeling fidgety or unable to concentrate when we're stressed.
Definitely.
Kids are dealing with a lot today. Academic pressure, social stuff, navigating friendships, social media, maybe bullying, plus family dynamics, busy schedules.
Yeah.
It all adds up.
So that stress can manifest physically?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Their nervous system can go into a kind of overdrive, that heightened arousal state. And that can look like not being able to sit still, constant movement, focus problems, even talking really fast or having emotional outbursts.
So managing the stress could potentially calm the physical restlessness.
That's the idea. The suggestions included things like evaluating the child's schedule. Is it too packed? Creating calming routines, especially around transitions or bedtime.
Yep.
Monitoring outside influences, advocating for their needs at school, modeling healthy stress management ourselves, and explicitly teaching them coping skills.
This next one feels very current. Screen time. The source mentioned electronic screen syndrome.
Yeah, that comes from Dr. Victoria Dunkley's work. She argues that excessive screen time can seriously overstimulate a child's nervous system.
How? Like the fast pace and bright lights?
Exactly. The rapid scene changes, the intense sensory input, the interactivity. It can overwhelm their system. And the result can look remarkably like ADHD.
Really? What kind of symptoms?
Difficulty transitioning away from screens, increased irritability or meltdowns, problems with focus and attention off screens, physical restlessness, sleep problems.
Wow. So it's like the brain gets wired for that level of constant stimulation?
That's the theory. It struggles to cope with lower stimulation activities afterwards. The source listed signs that maybe the digital reset is needed, like more agitation after screen use, sleep issues, resisting non-screen activity.
So what's the advice? Go cold turkey.
A digital detox, for a period, was suggested to let the nervous system calm down, but also building healthier habits long-term, setting clear time limits, having tech-free times or zones like the dinner table or bedrooms,
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing outdoor play and other activities, choosing age-appropriate, slower-paced content, and importantly, modeling healthy screen use ourselves.
Good point. Okay, let's talk about neurodivergence. It's a term we hear more often now.
Yes, and the source framed it really well, not as a flaw, but just a different way the brain can be wired, a different way of experiencing the world.
So this includes things like autism, dyslexia.
Right. Autism, ADHD itself is considered a form of neurodivergence, dyslexia, dysgraphia, giftedness, sensory processing disorder, lots of variations.
Giftedness, how does that relate to hyperactivity?
Interestingly, some traits of gifted children can overlap with or be mistaken for hyperactivity. Intense curiosity means they might move on from tasks quickly once they've mastered them, leading to restlessness.
Ah, so they're bored.
Potentially, yes. They might have really high energy levels, experience emotions very intensely, or have a strong need for mental stimulation that isn't being met. Then there's twice exceptional, or 2E, where a child might be gifted and have ADHD, for example.
Complex.
Yeah.
So supporting neurodivergent kids, what does that look like?
It's about understanding and accommodation, identifying their strengths, first and foremost, then making adjustments for their differences, whether that's sensory sensitivities, needing more intellectual challenge, requiring movement breaks, or thriving on specific routines. Building support systems is key.
That links nicely to the next point. Sensory needs. The idea that hyperactivity might just be a way to get sensory input.
Exactly. Think about a traditional classroom sitting still for long periods. For a child with high sensory needs, particularly the need for movement or deep pressure,
That's really hard.
it's incredibly difficult. And sometimes their attempts to meet those needs, fidgeting, rocking, getting up, can be seen as misbehavior.
Right.
This is where alternative educational settings can sometimes be beneficial. As the source mentioned, microschools, homeschool, project-based learning places, they might offer more flexibility and build movement into the day.
But even in a standard school, there are things you can do.
Oh, definitely. Simple things like regular movement breaks, allowing fidget tools, incorporating heavy work activities like carrying books, pushing furniture, wall pushes, these things can provide that needed sensory input proactively.
Okay, this last hidden cause feels really important. Trauma.
It is, and it's often overlooked.
Hmm.
Trauma isn't just about major disasters or abuse, what some call big T trauma. It can also include little t traumas, ongoing stressors, difficult experiences, medical procedures, even developmental trauma related to early attachment.
And how does that connect to hyperactivity?
Trauma can put the nervous system into a state of chronic hyperarousal. Basically, the body's stress response system gets stuck in the on position, constantly scanning for danger.
Like being on high alert all the time.
Exactly. And that state of hyperarousal can manifest physically as constant movement, fidgeting, being unable to settle, difficulty focusing, being easily startled, having big emotional reactions, sleep
That's
problems.
the body holding on to that stress.
Precisely. The brain-body connection is central here. Supporting a child with unhealed trauma involves creating safety, predictable routines, consistent responses, safe spaces, offering choices.
Building trust.
Yes, building connection, prioritizing the relationship, showing empathy, and often seeking professional trauma-informed support is crucial. Play therapy, specific therapies like EMDR or somatic experiencing, maybe biofeedback. Building a network of understanding adults around the child helps too.
That's incredibly important context. Now, shifting gears slightly,
Yeah.
let's tackle that persistent myth, sugar. Does it really cause hyperactivity?
Yes, the sugar rush theory. It's so widespread. But the research we consulted, referencing work like Dr. Woolrake's and information from CHADD and children's hospitals,
What did it say?
it consistently shows that sugar itself hasn't been proven to cause hyperactivity or significantly worsen ADHD symptoms in most children.
Huh. So all those warnings about birthday parties might be slightly overstated.
Well, maybe not entirely. The CHADD article did mention a potential link for some kids with artificial colors and preservatives, which are often in sugary foods. A Lancet study was referenced there.
Ah, okay, so it might be the additives, not the sugar molecule.
That's a possibility for a subset of children. But the direct sugar causes hyperactivity link. It's generally considered weak by scientific standards. Of course, limiting sugar is still good advice for overall health, teeth, weight, etc.
Right, okay, good to clarify. Finally, let's quickly touch on two fundamentals: sleep and exercise. Seems obvious, but probably crucial.
Absolutely critical, especially for kids prone to hyperactivity. Lack of sleep, as one source explained, can paradoxically increase hyperactivity.
How does that work? You'd think tiredness would slow them down.
Counterintuitively, the body might release stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to fight the fatigue and try to stay alert.
Ah, so they get wired instead of tired.
Exactly. So, ensuring sufficient sleep, good sleep hygiene, consistent routines, it's vital. And exercise, of course, is a fantastic way for all kids, but especially active ones, to channel that energy positively. Get those wiggles out productively.
It really paints a much richer, more complex picture, doesn't it? Hyperactivity isn't just one thing.
Not at all. It's clear there are so many potential layers.
Yeah.
ADHD is real and significant, yes. But we also need to consider parenting dynamics, nutrition, environmental stress, screen habits, neurodevelopmental differences, sensory processing, and even underlying trauma.
It really drives home the need to look at the individual child, the whole context, instead of just reacting to the surface behavior or reaching for a quick label.
Precisely. The goal is understanding. So we hope this deep dive encourages you, the listener, to consider these different angles when you observe hyperactive behavior. A holistic view, maybe talking with healthcare providers or educators, is usually the most helpful path.
This has been incredibly illuminating. Just seeing all those potential factors laid out really changes the perspective.
It does. And maybe that leads to a question for you to think about.
Yeah.
What was the most surprising potential cause of hyperactivity we talked about today? The one that made you go, huh, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, and maybe following on from that, is there one small thing based on this discussion that you might explore or pay more attention to better understand and support the kids in your world?
That's a great takeaway thought. Because ultimately, understanding the diverse roots of this behavior is the first step towards meeting children's needs effectively and supporting their overall well-being.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for exploring all this with us today.